Hello and welcome back to the channel. What you're looking at are Hurricane Katrina survivors that are being sued by the state of Louisiana. They and countless others are being sued, and I'm going to share with you the details. To me, it's very sickening and shocking that they would do this to these people all these years later. They've already endured one of the worst tragedies here in U.S. history. They stayed, they rebuilt, they received grants to do this, and that's what this is all about. When you hear the details, you're going to say, okay, come on now. Are you really going after these people? Some of them are afraid that they may lose their homes because the state is even talking about foreclosure for the liens. Now, let's get into this. Very, very disturbing story here. So what we are looking at are Katrina survivors that are being sued by the state of Louisiana after using grant money to rebuild. Now, that's what they were supposed to use it for. But you're going to see some of the details here. It says New Orleans. Celeste Matthews spent last summer's 16th anniversary of Hurricane Katrina in a panic at her cousin's house in uptown New Orleans as another monster storm, Hurricane Ida, roared through the city. With every gust, she was terrified the windows would shatter. The next day, she returned to her home in the Gerttown neighborhood to find part of the roof torn off. With the electricity out, she had to sleep with the windows open. Mosquitoes swarmed around her bed. It was horrible, said Matthews, who's 67 years old. After 3 days without power, Matthews had her daughter drive her to Houston. A week later, she returned home, closed the curtains, and sank into depression, spending the next several days in bed. Wow. Okay, chapter 1, it says, you have been sued. One morning, she awoke to a knock on the door. An Orleans Parish Sheriff's deputy was holding a stack of court papers. Matthews, her hands shaking, read the first page. State of Louisiana Division of Administration, Office of Community Development, Disaster Recovery Unit versus Matthews Celeste. Below that, you have been sued. When the levees broke during Katrina in 2005, Matthews' home was engulfed in 5 feet of water. She lost everything. Like most poor New Orleans, she struggled to cobble together enough money to rebuild. In 2008, the state of Louisiana offered Matthews $30,000 through the federally funded Road Home program to elevate her house to reduce the risk of future flooding. But her home was still unlivable, and she desperately needed the cash for repairs. To her relief, she said a Road Home representative told her she could use the elevation grant to instead pay for repairs. So she did. So keep in mind, y'all, she was told that she could do this by a representative. How would she know to do anything different, right? So now, more than a decade later, the state wanted the money back. Louisiana has sued about 3,500 people, about 1 in every 9 people who received an elevation grant, for failing to use the grant to raise their homes after Hurricane Katrina's disaster Rita struck in 2005. Okay, Hurricane Katrina and Rita struck in 2005. The real problem, however, wasn't that people ignored the rules. According to an investigation by The Advocate, the Times Picayune, it's the state's Office of Community Development and a contractor it hired in 2006, ICF Emergency Management Services, mismanaged the program. For more than a decade since, the U.S. Department of Housing and Development has insisted that the state recoup the money from people who are non-compliant. Now, how are you going to get $30,000 out of somebody who's poor? Give me a break. Okay, Louisiana gave money to 32,000 homeowners starting in 2008. The state was in such a rush to distribute grants that no one verified they were eligible. According to the testimony of a top state official in one of the lawsuits, some homeowners, like Matthews said, road home representatives told them they could use the money for repairs, even though that would violate their grant agreements. Okay, so if you have an official telling you that you can do this, why would you think otherwise? You have an official telling you you can do this. Okay, so twice between 2013 and 2015, the state tried to fix the problem, changing the rules to allow spending on repairs and other expenses. But by then, so much time had passed that many homeowners couldn't prove how they used the money. Some homeowners said they originally planned to elevate, but found that $30,000, the typical elevation grant, was less than a third of what it would typically cost to lift a house and put it into raised footings. So they gave them a grant for only a third. So where were they supposed to get the rest of it from? They're basically saying that it cost almost $100,000 to elevate, but they're giving them $30,000. So where are poor people supposed to get the rest of that? Anyway, in 2017, under pressure from the federal government to recoup the funds, Louisiana started filing lawsuits against residents. For many low-income homeowners, the suits could threaten financial ruin. Several preemptively declared bankruptcy, according to their attorneys. Others failed to defend themselves in court, resulting in the state placing liens on their properties. Some fear their homes will be taken away. So basically, you're going after low-income people. So you tell them, you go in and you help them. And now all these years later, when they thought that this was all in the rear view mirror, that it was all behind them, now you're coming at them with this, suing them, threatening to take homes, putting liens on property. See, once a lien goes on, they can enforce the lien at any time and say, look, give us our money, or we're going to force the sale of the house to recoup our money. See, that's a bunch of hogwash, y'all. That's a bunch of hogwash. Anyway, it says we worked our so-and-sos off to get where we are now, said Michelle Williams, 54, who is being sued along with her husband, Patrick Williams. And for this to happen, you're not helping the people of Louisiana. You're knocking us further and further back. If they lose the lawsuit, she said, I will crumble. The failures of Louisiana's elevation grant program are part of a tapestry of dysfunction in how America prepares for disasters and helps victims in their wake. ProPublica and The Advocate, the Times-Picayune, are exploring how a range of policies unintentionally punish working-class Americans and people of color, contributing to the disproportionate harm they suffer in catastrophes. So this is just ridiculous, y'all. This is utterly ridiculous that a state would even consider going after its citizens like that in something like this, you see. So getting past some of this, it says the lawsuits over elevation grants, which have left thousands of Louisiana homeowners facing the prospect of crippling liens or payment plans, are a part of a broader pattern of poor disaster planning. Wow, this is really, really sad, and these people are stressed out by this, no doubt. It says the majority of the elevation grants were in lower income neighborhoods and communities of color, as were the lawsuits that followed. According to an analysis by ProPublica and The Advocate, for roughly 3,000 lawsuits that could be mapped, more than half of properties were located in census tracts with median incomes below the surrounding areas. Roughly 2/3 of the properties were in the neighborhoods that were disproportionately black compared to their parishes. The state is seeking $103 million in the elevation lawsuit. So far, it has recovered nearly 5% of that from 425 families through the suits. Wow. So how do you expect to get $103 million from poor people? The agency tried to avoid taking such an aggressive approach, he said, but the state is required by the federal government to claw back money from people who didn't follow the grant requirements. We've gone to great lengths to try to not have to take money back from people, Forbes said, adding that the state will not foreclose on anyone's home to collect. So now that's good news. It's good news to hear that they won't foreclose, but that lien will be on there, so they would never be able to, just pass that on to a family member. They would have to take care of that lien before that happens. And hopefully they don't get any type of interest attached to that. It says a HUD spokesperson said the state could have used its own funds to repay any misspent grants rather than going after homeowners. Why not do that? Suing them years later runs counter to the goal of helping, yes it does, the devastated communities of Louisiana. Carter said he and other officials have talked to the Biden administration and Governor John Bel Edwards about wiping the slate clean. These are not people that defrauded the government, Carter said. These are people that used the money to repair their homes, and they should not be put in a position where now these homes are being threatened. Okay, chapter 2, I wish I never signed the papers. Donnie's small family has deep ties in Jefferson Parish, which borders New Orleans. His father was the first black sheriff's deputy in the parish. Small drove a public bus for 37 years. After Katrina, Small volunteered to shuttle first responders between a small town upriver and New Orleans, 29 miles every morning and night. Now notice it said he volunteered. He did so when his own family was suffering like so many others. The one-story house in Kenner that he shared with his wife and 2 daughters sat in 2 feet of water for days after the storm. Everything had to be replaced: furniture, flooring, appliances, wiring. Small, who was 69, received about $60,000 from his insurance company, but that covered only immediate needs, such as remediating mold and removing damaged trees. Unable to afford other accommodations, his family slept on air mattresses in the gutted structure. Wow. Wow, that is really sad. Wearing masks to keep out the dust. Small didn't know how he was going to come up with more money, but he refused to give up. I've never had any intentions of moving anywhere else, he said. This is my home. I'm going to be here. The Road Home program, created in 2006 to help people rebuild, often gave people less money than they needed to complete repairs because of how many awards were calculated. So in 2008, when the state sent 40,000 letters to homeowners telling them they were eligible for elevation grants, plenty of them were interested. The state of Louisiana is pleased to announce the funds are now available to assist you with the cost of elevating your home. The letter reads, to get the money, homeowners had to agree to raise their homes within 3 years of receiving grants. Yet when Small met the Road Home representative, he said he was told he could put his $30,000 grant toward repairs. The money was a godsend, Small said. So, again, when you have an official representative telling you it's okay for you to just put it towards repairs, you think you're okay. So once the State Office of Community Development received an application, it sent the money to homeowners. Jeff Haley, who helped administer the Elevation Grant Program as an official with ICF from 2006 to 2009, said in testimony during one of the Elevation's lawsuits, no one double-checked before the money went out that homeowners were eligible or that their homes needed to be elevated, said Haley, who is now with the State Division of Administration. The state simply didn't have time, he said. There was pressure to get the funds out into the community as fast as possible. The state told the news organizations that it selected people whose homes were in flooded-prone areas and who had already received another Road Home grant. It was up to homeowners to determine how much they needed to elevate their homes, officials said. And if they learned that they were already at the correct height, they should have returned the money. But when homeowners informed Road Home representatives, sometimes in writing, that they didn't plan to elevate their homes, they were verbally told that they could use the money for repairs according to 8 families and 8 attorneys representing more than 200 homeowners. State officials told the news organizations no homeowners have identified who told them they could use the money for repairs. They suggested this didn't happen until years later, after the state changed the rules to allow people who hadn't raised their homes to use elevation grants for repairs. So my thing is this: who would remember 16 years ago who they talked to, who gave them the verbal okay? Who would remember that? Again, Small said he never would have accepted the money if he hadn't been told he could use it to fix his home. Back then, it seemed they were really trying to help people, said Small, who is the subject of a pending lawsuit. We thought it was something that was a plus for us, that we can get our home back to the position that it was before the storm. Now I wish I never signed the paper. So there is a whole lot more that is talked about here in this article. It's a very long article. It's chapters, a very interesting story too. So, some of these people are saying they're too tired to fight. So many people have been sued in this. And it's just ridiculous that the state would go through these lengths to go after these people like this, knowing good and well that many of them probably had no idea what was going on. They were just trusting people that were telling them things. So much happened so fast. They lost so much. And so, still in a state of panic and shock, this is what was happening. They felt like they were making a right decision, that, hey, help is on the way. Help is here. And that help now turned out not to be help at all. So anyway, I want to hear your thoughts on this. Of course, I know many of you are going to say what a lot of people are saying, that this was totally unfair. This should have never happened. But at the end of the day, it did. And these are the kinds of things that are happening in this country, where poor people go through these things. They don't have the deep pockets that rich people have to fight these things and watch it vanish away. So hopefully someone is going to step in on their behalf and litigate this thing to a point where they can get a workable solution and not have the threat of losing their homes over their heads. Leave your comments below. I'm done with this story. Be sure to keep it tight and keep it right, but until next time. Be sure to ring the bell to be notified of new uploads on this channel, and also comment, share, like, and subscribe.